Hello and welcome to ACS Golf and this week's review. Well, I'm looking at the OG for me, the GOAT driver from TaylorMade, released in 2016. It is the M2. Now for me, this is the driver where TaylorMade sort of hit the plateau when it came down to distance. There's only so much you can do with a driver regarding sort of smash factor, ball speed, how thin the face can be, etc. And for me, in 2016, that's when TaylorMade hit it, just like Callaway did with a Great Big Bertha in the same year, and then sort of Cobra did it a few years later. They've all sort of reached that plateau where they can't perform any better. So obviously nowadays they're sort of concentrating more forgiveness to get better ball speed across the whole face, and maybe increasing that sort of swing speed by more aerodynamics, again to help increase that ball speed because you're obviously swinging the club faster. But overall wise, they can't improve on this. This was the original, the first club that was an absolute monster from TaylorMade. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a low spin monster, so there are definitely clubs out there that go further, but for your general consumer, this was the sort of the first monster. So much so that Rory McIlroy actually says this is his favourite driver. Because I asked him in an interview the other day, and I asked him, what's your favourite driver? And he's like, oh, it's the M2. He's like, if I could still play the M2, I would, but he said, I feel like it wouldn't be legal anymore, which just says everything about this club. It really does. So pick one up to review for you guys. I've also put this up against the QI35, which I currently have in the bag, the core model, which, this being the core model itself. So do watch that versus video. That's already out on the channel. And to be honest, if you've watched all YouTubers and myself against clubs that are older, and the fact, as I mentioned, for me, this is sort of peak TaylorMade, you won't be surprised by the results in that video. But anyway, I'll let you guys watch that and find it out for yourself. But as always, what we're going to do here is we're going to have a closer look at this club. We're going to come back here for the technology that's in it. Then we're going to get down to the range, going to throw some figures at you, and then we're going to go through the ACS golf scale and give you my overall thoughts about this club. One thing I will say, the figures wise, was affected by a little bit of a headwind, but so was all the other clubs that I tested on that day. So I do take that into factor when I go through the ACS golf scale and give you that distance rating. So there you go. But anyway, let's have a closer look at this. Let's be honest, gorgeous looking thing. It still looks, if you put that in your bag nowadays, it still would turn heads. All right, let's have a closer look at it. So there you go, and it is a good looking thing still. Look at that. I do like the old classics. Look at that bowl. I can't believe I'm calling this a classic. Well, it's nearly 10 years old, so maybe you should be calling it classic. But, TaylorMade with the old classic white and the carbon crown there for the old M range is really cool. All the way up to Sim 2, to be fair. Look really, really good. I'm never a massive fan of this carbon all the way up to the top in sort of infinity crown. I always like to have like a little different colour there, personally, which I love these clubs for. But going into the technology that is in it. So firstly, we've got a multi-material construction, so a 7-layer carbon composite crown that is precision formed and built ultra thin, ultra light and high strength to maximize weight savings. So there you go. Massive sweet spot, so weight placed lower. There it is. And further back on the sole for more efficient power transfer, giving golfers more ball speed. Then moving on to maximum forgiveness, so engineered with a high MOI, inverted cone technology and a redesigned inverted cone technology there. Idea is that. And a redesigned speed pocket there in all TaylorMade clubs still. Obviously they've tinkered with it, but it has gone, well, it's tested the time really, and it's been in the clubs for years, ever since they brought out Adams Golf, who had that speed pocket. That's why they brought Adam, because they wanted that technology. And they took it and they've used it really well, so can't complain about that really. 3 features that combine to produce maximum forgiveness and speed across the face. High trajectory, so a lower CG projection with a new speed pocket and exceptional aerodynamics generate a hot high launch, that's low spin trajectory. And then finally you have adjustable loft sleeve, so 12 positions. You could adjust it, well, 2 degrees up, 2 degrees down. to dial in maximum performance by adjusting loft, light and face angle. And that's one thing I'll say about Taylormade, is when you do adjust it up or you do adjust it down, it does change that face angle. So if you increase the loft, it tends to close the face a little bit more. If you decrease the loft, it tends to open the face a little bit more. So do be aware of that. It's not like sort of new Cobras now and, you know, Callaway's and your Titleist have been doing it for years with that sort of really adjustable one where, you know, you can adjust it up without changing the face angle. I do really like that, but not the end of the world, but just do be aware of that. So there's a quick rundown of all the technology that is in this club. You know, carbon crown, no twist face on this, but still a lot of stuff in there. For like, you know, you don't have the inertia generator, I will say that, but you know, speed pockets, carbon in there. You know, haven't moved a huge amount away from it. You know, they can't, because you can only have that so thin, as I mentioned. You know, 460cc head, can't have it any bigger. You know, technology has already been at its limits. So this is why this thing is still a monster when it comes down to your average golfer. It's not a low spin monster like the SLDR or something like that, which is a few years older than this, but you know, it's still a monster. All right, guys, now let's get down to the range. We're going to throw some figures at you, and then we're going to come back here and we're going to go through the ACS golf scale. All right, see you in a bit. Here I am down with the M2 at the range, and quite a breezy day into my face, unfortunately. Always annoying when this happens during testing. But anyway, let's get into those figures. So on average, I had a carry of 224 yards, total distance of 246 yards, ball speed of 150 miles per hour, launch angle 11, height 71 feet, and swing speed around 102 miles per hour mark. So really actually happy with those figures. You know, definitely if I didn't have that headwind in my face, would have got some more distance out on it. So really pleased with that. Longest was carry of 235 yards, total distance of 250 yards, with a ball speed of 151 miles per hour. So, you know, again, happy with that. While the shortest was only a total distance of 241. So really impressive numbers with this club. One thing I will say, maybe consistency is in left or right wasn't maybe quite there as maybe more modern drivers, but overall out in the middle, this club just went as far as anything else would out there in the current market, which is a really good sign. I mean, it felt nice, it was a joy to hit. You know, did feel like I could really go for it. Obviously missed hits were punished with maybe where they went, but not necessarily punished with ball speed. So happy with those figures, which are very consistent. You know, longest really happy with that into wind. You know, without that wind, we're definitely going to be up to like 260, 270 mark, I think. Shortest again, not bad. You know, that would have been over 250. Launch angle 8 degrees, not the best, but you know, have an average launch angle 11 with 10.25 degree head. I'm really happy with that. And swing speed was pretty consistent throughout. So generally some really, really impressive figures from a driver that's nearly 10 years old, to be honest. So there you go. And all right, you could say technically on paper they're not great figures, but due to the fact I had that wind into my face, you know, really actually happy with that. To be honest, you know, the figures were solid. You know, I'm not going to mention how to do against QI35. Check out the video for that. But they, you know, they were really solid. So, you know, carry of 224. That's exactly sort of where I'd expect it, to be honest, from the days when I was swinging a little bit slower. So, you know, you can just tell with that higher swing speed, better ball speed, I would have got even more distance. Same with the total distance, 246. You know, ball speed 150 miles per hour. Really happy with that. Launch angle 11, not bad. You know, I had this set at 10.25 degrees, so to get that launch angle for that sort of loft for me is really good. I normally play off 12. To be honest, 12 degrees to really help me get that ball in the air. So does get this, well, does launch it really nicely. So happy with that. Height 71 feet, obviously got held up maybe a little bit in the wind, but still really good there. You know, swing speed on average around 102 miles per hour. So, you know, really happy. And the longest 250, cannot complain about that at all with a carry of 235. You know, really happy with those numbers. On a windy day like that, I would take that any day of the week. So really pleased with it. And it was fun. It was fun to hit. I enjoyed it. I just wanted to keep on going. So there we go. Now, moving on to ACS Golf Scale. Just changed one then, actually. Just reading through it. I do that a lot of times. If you've watched my reviews before, I look at my ACS Golf Scale and then decide, actually, I'm going to just quickly tweak that while doing the video. Because always, you know, always thinking about these clubs, especially when I'm talking to you guys about them, because it makes me think even a little bit more. But anyway, we're definitely going down the garden path there. So let's bring it back to the review. So ACS Golf Scale. Remember, we've got 5 categories. We've got distance, looks, price, forgiveness, and feel. 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. Now, for me, distance, the QI35 haven't done that review yet. Actually, that'll be coming out soon. But QI10, for example, the core model was 4 out of 5. The dark speed last year I did was 4 out of 5. You know, drivers this year's that I've done, which are sort of the standard models, the DS Adapt, I don't know, I haven't done the DS Adapt, but the C725, sorry, that was a Fairywood I was looking at there, but you know, the C725 Tour Edge, 4 out of 5. You know, for me, the standard core model nowadays, if it's producing the numbers you need, would be roughly about 4 out of 5. Don't get me wrong, I could probably do a subcategory and then sort of move them around a little bit, but that's exactly what I'd expect everything. Sim 2 Max, which I did, 4 out of 5. You know, that's where I'd expect them to be. No difference with this. 4 out of 5 produces just the same distant numbers as anything else out there in the core model for me. If you're hitting out the middle of the face, you're going to get decent numbers. You're going to match it up to any of the other guys. You know, golf bidder, I think it's Golf Bidder, the second-hand store over here in the UK. I've forgotten the name of it. Golf Bidder. I think it is Golf Bidder. They did something on Instagram the other day and put this up against the QI10, and this was actually the same distance. You know, so it's definitely in that category. It's 4 out of 10 for me. It has enough distance to match any other core model out there. Is it going to match your LS models? No, because they're low spin. They're built for maximum distance. You know, this is a core model. It's supposed to be long, but also forgiving. So there you go. So yeah, 4 out of 5, really solid, really, really happy with it. Feel wise, 3.5 out of 5. Maybe that's what I could say. Maybe the downside of it a little bit. 3 out of 5 is still 3.5, sorry, out of 5 is still really good. Feels really nice. But for me, the QI35, for example, I just like that carbon face now. Feels a bit nicer. Dark speeds, the Cobras, the new Cobras feel really nice. You know, it does feel powerful. It feels solid, but just not quite the softness as some of the more sort of newer drivers out there, which personally I quite like the feel of. Some of you guys will love this and say it's the best feeling driver ever, but for me, just like a little bit more of that sort of softer feel. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5. Nothing horrendous, nothing bad, but just not quite as nice as the newer stuff on the market. That's what I would say, but nothing to write home about really. You'd still love it as an average golfer, and you're not going to be hitting it every time and be going, oh my god, that feels horrible. You know, good solid sound as well from it because of that carbon. So yeah, can't really complain. Looks wise, I'm going to 4 out of 5. I like the look of it. I do. You know, it is good. It looks because of all the aerodynamic stuff, it looks a little bit disproportionate with that sort of M2 there, not really in the middle, which I really did not like about the QI10 last year either, to be fair. Everything just seemed to be a bit off-centered because they've done it for the aerodynamics. As you can see there, see, just all looks a little bit off-centered, but there's a reason for it, obviously, to help with that ball speed. But really like it, you know, love that white there, love the carbon crown. You know, I do think it's a good looking driver. Maybe in a couple more years, it might start to look a little bit old because of that white and the carbon, but it's still a classic looking club. You know, it is a thing of beauty, and I do love that shape as well. I love that sort of bulge at the top there. So yeah, 4 out of 5. You know, it's a solid looking driver. Enjoy it, really do. Moving on to, let's do price first and then we'll do forgiveness. So price is a bit of a weird one with this because it has a bit of a cult following because, you know, it is such a good club. It still is such a good club. You know, people still love to use it. And the problem is, you know, people are using it like this one. You know, it does get worn down. Drivers do have a time limit on their lives. I mean, I had a friend who has had the G400, you know, and cracked the face. Not specifically a big hitter, but he's just used it so much. He's had so much use on it. You know, it will go in the end. So to find a really decent one of these, you're sort of looking around the 130 mark, which is around the sort of $160. Like brand new, sort of looking, you're looking £150, or it's around $190. eBay, you can get them around 100 quid if you're lucky, so that's not the end of the world, which is around $130. But then the conditions are a bit more like this, to be fair. In going golf clubs for cash for second-hand store, you're looking around the £130, well, £127 start off, which is around $160. So not horrendously expensive, but it does then put it in the brackets of a lot of other drivers out there. You know, if you're looking at £150, then why wouldn't you maybe get a TaylorMade Sim secondhand? You know, that's 2020, Sim 2, 2021, Stealth 22, Stealth Plus, yeah, 2020. The Sim, you know, you could get that. You know, the Sim's not going to offer you any more distance than this, but it might give you a little bit more forgiveness. You know, it's newer, it's going to be in better shape. if you're looking at 150 miles. So it does destroy that a little bit, but performance only, I'm still going to give it a 4 out of 5. You know, this thing, as I mentioned, will keep up with anything else in your bag. You know, if you're hitting out of the middle, it's just as good, and it does look brilliant. It is such a good driver. It was Taylormade's one of their best. Why? That is why Rory loves it still. You know, if you got one of the best golf players in the world saying he wishes he could put this, well, still have this in a bag, it is saying something, isn't it? So there you go, you know, because he can use all brand new technology, you know, and he wants to put that in a bag. And the only reason he feels he can't do is because he doesn't feel like it's legal. And obviously the huge contract from TaylorMade. But I'm pretty sure Justin Rowe's been playing this recently, to be fair. He keeps on going back to the M2, if I'm not mistaken, over the years. He doesn't tend to go for new drive. Yeah, Justin Rowe. So there you go. Again, says everything about it. So yeah, 4 out of 5. Not higher just because there are other options out there. If you're starting to get one in a really good condition, you know, then you sort of, like I said, TaylorMade Sim, and then you can go down Cobra F9 route or Cobra Dark Speed for crying out loud, you know, or the Cobra Aerojet. You know, there's a lot of new drivers from other brands that sort of fall in that bracket. We can get a newer club which would perform just as well as this. So yeah, so 4 out of 5, really good performance for what it is. But yeah, 4 out of 5. We've spoken enough about that now. Give me a 4 out of 5. So moving on. Now, moving on to forgiveness. So for a core driver for this, I would normally give forgiveness of, say, a 4 out of 5 for me would be spot on. Well, maybe spot on, but nowadays would be spot on. You know, getting close to core drivers, getting really maximum forgiveness. I mean, the QI35, for example, the weight at the back is actually a 9K driver, 9K MOI, just, you know. And there's one thing I will say about testing is ball speed hasn't dropped off at all. You know, the slowest ball speed I got was 148 miles per hour. You know, it hasn't dropped off, the ball speed. What has dropped off is the dispersion of it. So my bad shots with this tended to be a bit worse. I wasn't hitting it the best on the day of testing. You know, the way I set up, I hit a draw every single time pretty much. And for some reason that day I was moving it right, holding maybe a few injuries at the moment. I don't know. Who knows why? Well, I know why, actually, to be fair. But, you know, so I'm moving it a little bit right at the moment. So I am slicing it down the range, specifically on that day. Next day, next week, I was hitting that draw again. There's a few things sort of fixed themselves, a bit of break. And also, yeah, just had a bit of break, really. You know, sometimes that helps the body heal to go back to its natural swing again. But yeah, so I was hitting that sort of fade shot, and it was just worse than if I was using, say, the more modern drivers. Basically, the dispersion was wider with it. So forgiveness wise, I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5. Not quite the 4 like everything else would sort of be in this model, just because of that dispersion pattern. But the way it protects the ball speed and everything like that is still very good. So, and it still offers, you know, some really good forgiveness there. You know, it really does offer some great forgiveness. You know, 3.5 out of 5. It's definitely good enough for your average golfer to go out and use this day in, day out. Or you even beginner golfer to pick up and use it day in, day out. You know, the bad misses, yes, were a little bit worse than your sort of brand new drivers, but not £400 worth or whatever the cost of getting a new one over there. So there you go. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5. So there you go. Now, my real thoughts about the M2 driver. So, is it the GOAT? Is it the best driver that TaylorMade have produced? I generally think it is. I generally think this is. I think this thing is awesome. I think for the price of it, yes, you can get other drivers out there, which I probably personally would go for just because they're a bit newer. But if you wanted to go down this route, you would not be disappointed, and it would be £130, £140 well spent, because it will give you just as much distance as everything else out there, and plenty of forgiveness to really help you improve your game. Maybe not as new guys who have higher MOI, you know, because that's why the ball was moving, because it didn't have that MOI. It protects the ball speed perfectly, didn't quite have that MOI of those off hits. It was just moving them a little bit more than I'd sort of want to. Not the end of the day, just means I'm being maybe in the trees rather than just off the fairway. So, you know, it's probably is the end of the day, to be fair, just being off the fairway and being in the trees. But yeah, you know what I mean. You know, it's not going to be a ball loss potentially. It will just be, you know, sort of maybe chipping out or something like that every now and again, while the other ones might just keep me on the fairway. But again, for £400 more, just use that for lessons and you hit the middle of the fairway every single time. So there you go. So yes, this thing is brilliant. If you've never tried one and you just fancy giving it a go, do. They are great. Now, if you enjoyed this review, do leave a comment down below. What driver do you use? Do you use the M2? Have you used the M2 before? If you have, what are your thoughts? Is it still in the bag? I've got a friend who plays off 11, so he's not a bad golfer at all. And he still uses his M2 2017 model though, still has it in the bag, and will never replace it. He doesn't want to. Works for him amazingly. So do let me know down in the comments down below, if you played an M2 over the years and what are your thoughts. Obviously give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and do remember to hit that subscription button and bell icon so you do not miss out on weekly ACS golf reviews like this, versus videos as well, like this against the QI35, and brand new equipment reviews every now and again as well. Lots and lots of stuff this year, really ramping up the video content. And then maybe might put some course blogs at some point at the end of the summer. We'll see how we go on that point. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon for the next ACS golf video. See you then. Bye-bye.